Hello students, I, Assistant Professor Mayur Thakur, welcomes you all in the video lecture series of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. In today's session, we are going to discuss a very famous short story written by a very famous author, Ruskin. So in today's session, we are going to discuss very first the objectives, then we discuss about author, major works, short story as a genre of literature, storyline, vocabulary, check your progress, and last we'll discuss what will we know to about this author and this story. Now, as we are very much aware of the fact that it is your very block 1 and the unit 3 of the F by VA compulsory English course. Now, let us go to the objectives first. So, in this unit we will be introduced to one of the most popular forms of literature, which is short story. In our school days to college days, we are very much acquainted with the form of short story. We will also get a brief prose narrative in this unit, and we will also discuss a single episode with limited characters to a single episode, because the whole story that we are going to discuss today, it's all about, it happens in a single episode in a railway coach. Now, another thing that we'll discuss is we'll discuss the 5 important elements, namely plot, characters, setting, conflict and resolution. Here we will study a beautiful short story by Ruskin, one of the greatest short story writers in Indian writing in English. So this is Ruskin, born in 1934. Now, if you look at the Ruskin, so Ruskin was born in 19 May 1934 in Kasauli, Himachal Pradesh, and raised in Shimla, Jamnagar, Dehradun, and Mussoorie. And he is the noted Indian writer of Indian fiction in Indian English fiction. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 1999, and he received the Sahitya Akademi Award, which is one of the highest literary honor in India for writing in Indian English fiction and other short stories. The story that we are going to discuss today is the very first appeared in the Contemporary Indian Short Stories, edited by Shiv K. Kumar in 1991. The most of Bond's writing are heavily influenced by the social life of the hill stations near the foothills of the Himalayas, where he spent his youth. His debut work, The Room on the Roof, was written at the age of 17 and published at the age of 21. So, if you look at his journey from 1934 to even today, he is very much active in writing. You can see that he was somewhat inspired by experiences in Dehra, specifically in his modest rented roof room and by his companions. In 1957, he was awarded the John Llewellyn Rice Memorial Prize for Room on the Roof, which was his very debut work. He has since published over 300 short stories, essays and novellas, including Valorance in the Valley, The Blue Umbrella and A Flight of Pigeons, as well as over 30 children books. He is a very well-known figure, especially in the children's literature. He authored 2 books of autobiography, Scenes from a Writer's Life, which chronicles his formative years in Anglo-India, and The Lamp is Lit, a compilation of essays and journals. After looking at the biographical information and the achievements our author has, let's look at the major works of Ruskin. So these are the major works of Ruskin. The Room on the Roof, very first, you can say his debut work, published in 1956. The Blue Umbrella, 1974. The Night Train at Deoli, 1988. A Flight of Pigeons, Delhi is 1978. Delhi is Not Far, 1994. Cherry Tree, Rusty the Boy from the Hills, 2002, and the very latest we can say Vagrants in the Valley, that is 2016. So these are some of the major works. Apart from these major works, he has written many works, fiction, non-fiction works in his life. So he is very much, as we discussed in the previous slide, that he is very much famous for his writings for children. Now, if you look at the short story, so short story is a genre of literature. And nowadays, after fiction, short story is one of the, we can say, very famous literary form. A short story is a piece of prose fiction that typically can be read in one sitting. We can easily finish any short story, and focuses on a self-contained incident or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking a single effect or mood. The short story is in the form of oldest types of literature and has existed in the form of legends, mythic tales, folk tales, fairy tales, tall tales, fables, and anecdotes in various ancient communities around the world. Like we have seen in literature, we have epic, ballad, which talks about a particular which gives us a kind of entertainment through stories. Mostly it's used even in every language. We find this form. Short story is not only available in English but also in many other languages. In every literature, we find this form very much popular. Now, before we read this interesting and very interesting short story, just ask yourself that what interesting travel experience have you had that taught you something about yourself? Because the story that we are going to discuss is very much focused on an encounter of two passengers in a railway coach. So this is title slide for the story. This is how it looks. So the story, The Eyes Are Not Here, is focused on a conversation between two people, and how the conversation starts and how it ends with a climax. We can say with the turning twist that happened in the end, that we will discuss in the upcoming slides. Now the eyes are not here. So these are the major points of the story in which we discuss one by one. So the introduction is very much that. Then we discuss that how it starts and how it ends. Now let us focus on the introduction. The Eyes Are Not Here is a delightful story written by Ruskin. The story describes the pleasant and romantic journey of the blind man, the narrator with a charming blind girl in a railway coach. Both of them try to conceal the fact of their blindness from each other. So both narrator and the girl, as we have seen in the earlier slide, that both girl and the narrator both are blind, but they are trying to conceal their blindness from each other. None of them knows that the other passenger is also blind. The story turns humorous as both try to impress each other by their oratory skills. Now we look at the next point, that is entry of a blind girl into the compartment. How the conversation starts. Once the narrator, who was totally blind, was traveling to Rohana in a railway compartment. A charming blind girl also entered the same same compartment, in the same coach. Here, her parents had come to the station to see her off. They gave her necessary instruction that try to avoid strangers, don't talk to strangers and everything, that take care of yourself and don't talk to strangers and everything. Generally that we have seen that if we go to any journey, our parents said, please don't eat food from strangers, don't take anything from strangers, and so forth. So they advised her not to talk to the strangers, and after some time the train started. Now what happened, that as we discussed earlier, that both are blind, so narrator is unable to see the girl. The narrator was sitting in the corner of the compartment. He was unable to see the girl because he was completely blind, but he liked the voice of the girl, and also the activate windows sound of her sleepers. And when she came, the sound of her sleepers just strikes his mind, and then he decided that someone is entered, and he started to talk to the girl, and he decided that I'll speak to the person. Now, how the conversation between the girl and the narrator started. If you look at the conversation between the girl and the narrator asked the girl if she was going to Dehra. Dehra is the name of a place. She was surprised to hear the voice of a man in the compartment. She just surprised that someone is there, because she thought that nobody is there in the railway coach. She had thought that she was alone in the compartment. Yet she answered the question asked by him. She said that she will get down at Saharanpur. So Saharanpur is also name of a city. The narrator told her that he was going to Dehra and from there to Mussoorie, because he loved the hills and natural scenic beauty of the place. As we see that Mussoorie is situated in Uttarakhand, which is a very famous hill station and a popular tourist spot in India. Now, So narrator is basically going to Mussoorie. So both are the conversation that started with narrator's approach. So he begin and she replies. The blind girl replies, and what happened? As we all know that both are trying to conceal their blindness. Now let's look at what happened in this point. So if you look at this point, the narrator was trying to conceal his blindness from the very beginning. He didn't know. He didn't know that the girl was also blind. Means he has no idea that the person whom he is speaking with is not able to see anything. The girl was also making an attempt to conceal her blindness. So girl is also trying to conceal that she was not also telling the narrator that she is also blind. The narrator passed a very daring but safe remark. You have an interesting face. Though he is blind, but he is passed a very safe remark that you have an interesting face. And then she laughed pleasantly. Without knowing, just to to put forward the conversation, he just remarked that you have an interesting face. The narrator liked it. The narrator liked it because normally he didn't like to travel for more than 2 or 3 hours in a train, as he used to get bored. But today he was ready to sit for any length of time in the company of the girl. And why did he not? And why not? Because when he is sitting in a company of a girl, he started that today I will speak, and he was actually enjoying the conversation with that girl. He was thinking that he would remember this meeting for a long period of time. And then what happened when girl departs? Now let's look at the departure of the girl. As her station approaches very near and near, the girl started collecting all her things, and she got down at Saharanpur. While going, she said goodbye to the narrator, and the narrator was so impressed with the girl that he was feeling very sad. Though the girl got down, the perfume of her hair still lingered where she had stood in the compartment. So now here the girl gets away and after collecting all her things and get down at the Saharanpur station. But narrator was so much impressed and so much lost in thoughts of that girl, that what a conversation that he had, and what an encounter. I mean, what a thing what beautiful day he is having. But now the twist comes, because every short story has some twists. And now let's look at what actually happened at the end. Now entry of a new traveler. So after the departure of girl, a new passenger came. After the girl got down, a new traveler entered the compartment. He told the narrator that he was not an attractive passenger as the girl who had just left. As we earlier see that he remarked that you have an interesting face, because and why. The narrator said that she was an interesting girl, but the narrator could not hold his curiosity. He asked the new traveler if that girl kept her hair long or short. The man replied, means the new passenger replied that he didn't remember it correctly because he noticed only her eyes. He told the narrator that she had beautiful eyes, but they were of no use to her because she was totally blind. The author couldn't notice it because he was also blind. So this is the twist that happened in the story, because he remarked that you have an interesting face, but at the end when the new passenger came, he realized that it is of no use. She has beautiful eyes. So that's the twist, and you can say the irony of the story. Now if we sum up the story in few words, we can say the story ends at an ironical note when the narrator gets to know that the girl was also blind. She was also pretending to conceal her blindness like narrator himself. So we can say that both are trying to hide their identity, that both are blind, but they were trying to conceal their identity that both are blind. They were not able to they were not trying to tell each every other that they were not able to see. And narrator is also trying to win her heart and trying to impress that girl by making this kind of remarks. But when the new passenger came and tell him that the girl has very not an interesting face, but she has very beautiful eyes, and which as we have the title that eyes are not here, and it justifies the title that why it is called the eyes are not here. Now if you look at some of the very famous, we can say some of the very important words, and it can be used for to increase your vocab. Just like in school days we have glossary, that some words are given at the end of every short story which helps us to improve our word building. That is, one is compartment, section of a railway carriage. Rohana, which is the name of a place. Anxious means worried, concerned. Pulled out means left. Sensitive means reacting to. Slapped, beat noisily. Startled means surprised. Exclamation, a sound that expresses surprise or any other sudden feeling. Take-in means to observe, to notice. Essentials means primary means necessary things. So these are words are given in your textbook. And also if we finish this beautiful story in a few words, we can say that we have studied a very appealing story by Ruskin. The story is an example of an ideal story that contains only three characters. Only three characters in this story. One is the narrator himself, second the blind girl, and the third is the new passenger. And the setting of the novel is that very railway compartment. The whole episode, I mean the whole setting of the story is a railway compartment that contains only three characters. Short span of time means the only thing happens is very, just suppose we are, even in our life, we go to some place for half an hour, we spoke to somebody in a bus or in a train or in a plane. So these are things just happen in a short span of time. Compact plot, a very compact plot, and universal theme of limited human perception. Limited, it's a universal theme. It ends with an ironical twist. As we see the twist, what is the twist? That both are trying to hide their blindness, which is one of the important characteristics, and that is the important characteristics of a good short story. Though the story has been written in a single lucid style, it has a complex plot that ends in a in a startling manner. So this is how the story took place in a particular setting, and with three characters in a railway coach. The conversation happened between the narrator and the blind girl, which is beautifully portrayed by the author. Now, if you look at the last thing that we need to take care of, that is check your progress and the questions that are given at the end of the story, which will help you to practice for the exams. And also you will able to study and try to read the story, which is of 3 to 4 pages. You can easily complete any short story in one sitting. One more thing that you need to keep in your mind before reading short story, that just ask yourself that what is the moral of the story. At the end of the day, we got to know that though both the characters are blind, but they are very much happy with their identity, and both are just trying to live with their lives. And the comic end is that only because of the new passenger who arrived after the departure of girl, who lets us know the narrator that she was blind, but though narrator was happy. So the story ends in a very happy note. So at the end of the day, the story ends with a happy note. And try to read, make your own notes from the SLM that you have, the self-learning material that you have, and try to read and make your own notes and practice more and more. In the next session, we will meet with more new short stories and grammar topics. Thank you all for joining today's video session. See you all in the next lecture. Thank you.